One, I have 3 sons from a previous marriage. So are they my husband's stepsons? Is my husband a mahram to their wives? Well, yes, they would be called your husband's stepsons. That's correct. But your husband is not a mahram to their wives. The mahram, the husband becomes, the father becomes a mahram to the wife of his son. Why? Because he can never marry her. Just as the son becomes a mahram to the father's wife, because he can never marry her. You know, of course, if the father's wife is his mother, we know that already. So we're talking about a father taking another wife, who is like his stepmother, right? Or his father has a second wife. In such cases, the son is mahram to that wife of the father for life, even if the father divorces her. Similarly, the father is mahram to the son's wife, as long as it's his son by blood, right? His own son. He's mahram to that son's wife for life. If the son and his stepdaughter, son and his daughter-in-law, right? Daughter-in-law, if they divorce, their relationship ends, but the relationship with the father continues until life, because he can never marry her. So he is mahram to her. But to the wives of stepsons, no. A stepson, no matter how much, if he grew up in the home from birth, unless the in the case where the father has a wife who is not the mother of his son, but that wife raised the son from birth, breastfeeding him, then she becomes his suckling mother, in which case he becomes mahram for her and he can never marry her if even the father divorces. Right? In the case of, second, there are 2 schools of thought on niqab. Is a woman supposed to take the easier way on these 2 schools of thought, which will be no niqab? Since the Prophet ﷺ said if he had 2 choices, he would take the easier one if it's not haram. This is a third question. If a lady wearing niqab suffers from vertigo, and wearing niqab makes the problem worse by making her sick, she falls down even when being careful, once flat out in a busy street, but alhamdulillah, no cars ran over her. Is this considered taking the hard way in Islam? I want a correct answer to this, inshallah. Well, yes, there are 2 basic positions which are held with regards to the niqab. One, that it is compulsory, and the other, that it is recommended. There is a third position, that it is an Arab tradition. This has been expressed by a number of modernists, but this is completely wrong. It isn't an Arab tradition, it is an Islamic tradition based on the Quran and the Sunnah. Now, with regards to the 2 positions, the 2 valid positions, one where it's considered compulsory, the other one was considered recommended. One is held by the vast majority of Muslim scholarship, that is recommended, and the other by a minority of scholars, that it is compulsory. And of course, the issue is not a question of majority and minority, but when we look at these issues, it is really the responsibility of the individual who has to make a decision here to look at the arguments of both sides. Hear what those who say it is compulsory say, hear what those who say it is recommended say. And after, whatever they're convinced of, what seems to be most correct to them, then that's the one they follow. So we should try to follow this based on knowledge, not on one's desire. If in the end, the evidence appears to be equally the same, then one may consider taking the one which you could say they're both correct. These are both options here. Then one may consider taking the easier of the two. If one finds oneself in the situation, especially in the case where sister is suffering from vertigo, and wearing the niqab causes her to fall down in the street and all these kind of things. Because of course Islam does encourage us to take the easier path. And that's the goal of the religion, is to make things easy for us. I could also say that when the Prophet ﷺ chose the easier path, this is when you had two cases of things which were halal. Neither one was considered haram. So this is the standard situation where you choose the easier one. You have two choices, both of which are halal. But where there's one saying halal and another saying haram, to choose the easier one is, one now questions, is it this is a point of desire or nafs, where you're just going for what is easy, when in fact you may be convinced that the other one, which says it's haram or whatever, is more, it's correct, more correct, but it's more difficult, so you avoid it. In such a case, one shouldn't follow one's desire. A question which is coming from lectures. Dear Dr. Bilal, is smoking haram? This is a common question which comes up quite often in lectures and in the mail also. Smoking, without a doubt, is haram. We have been tested by it in our times. It is something destructive. It destroys the lives of human beings in the United States today and in England. It is the major killer. It kills more people than any other disease. Smoking. And Islamic law regarding anything which can take your life, for you to take that knowing that it can take your life, this is considered suicide. Such an act is haram. As Allah tells us in the Quran, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Do not kill yourselves. وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ. Don't throw yourselves with your own hands into destruction. The Prophet ﷺ had said, whoever kills himself in this life will find himself perpetually in the hellfire, killing himself in the same way. So, smoking is without a doubt haram. Yes, there are some who still hold and say that it is makruh, but this was an old ruling made some 500 years ago when the consequence of smoking was unknown. The only harm that seemed to have come from it in those days was bad breath, whereas today we know it kills. It causes cancer, and people die from cancer. Second question, is reciting the Quran beside the dead person seen in many places in India, is this acceptable? I know it's not acceptable. Reciting the Quran for the dead person, the person is dead, then what you need to do then is to prepare the body for burial. While the person is still alive, to recite Quran for them is quite valid. I encourage them to say La ilaha illallah, let this be among the last words that they say before they leave this world. As the Prophet ﷺ said, لَقِّنُوا مَوْتَاكُمْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. That you should get those who are dying to repeat La ilaha illallah. Whatever things which will help them remember Allah, we should encourage them to do so. But after they have died, and this of course is an ignorant practice, people after the person is already dead, they wrap him up and they take him to the graveyard or whatever, taking him for Salatul Janazah, and you hear people saying to him, La ilaha illallah, say La ilaha illallah. This is nonsense. He's already dead. He can't hear you anymore. You're telling him anything, it's not going to benefit him at all. This instruction is for the living. Another question which has come in: is dyeing your hair permissible, like colors, for example, in different colors, for example, auburn, etc.? Well, dyeing the hair, where a person has gray hair, this is from the Sunnah. Prophet ﷺ encouraged the Muslims to dye their gray hair. So this is from the Sunnah to do so. The beards, the mustaches, the hair, women, their hair, dyeing their hair, this is permissible and encouraged, strongly encouraged. But dyeing the hair just because you don't like the color, you want to make a new color, you want some variety, this kind of thing. Well, really, this is among the practices of the kuffar, of the disbelievers. This is part of their common practice. We should avoid this. It is implying that you're not satisfied, you're not happy with what Allah has given you. So, the general advice would be not to dye your hair unless you're dyeing the gray. And that dyeing should be not use black. With that, dear viewers, I'd like to thank you for being with us in this segment of our program, In the Light of Islam. And as I mentioned previously, you may fax into us, you may email into us, fld3@hotmail.com, or you may send letters to In the Light of Islam, Dr. Bilal Phillips, P.O. Box 111, Sharjah Television, Sharjah. And we hope to see you in our coming episodes. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.